In its most life-giving forms, writes Gareth Higgins, cinema illuminates not only the characters, images, and stories on the screen, but also those of us who are watching. Spike Lee's Malcolm X exemplifies such cinema, I think, illuminating a life more comprehensively than any biopic should be expected to handle in 3 hours. The opening oration is stark, charging the white man with the monstrosity of anti-black racism. We are living proof of those charges, says Denzel Washington in a career-defining performance as Malcolm X, over footage of the 1991 police beating of Rodney King, which happened mere miles from where we sit right now. This opening political and moral confrontation is rare in film. Who we believe ourselves to be will determine whether we are mirrored or provoked. If we feel seen, that's the point. If we're uncomfortable, that's the point too. The film traces the spiritual development of a real person and invites our grace in the face of flaws, complexities, and even contradictions. And it invites how we honor others' spiritual journeys and our own, recognizing that if they are vibrant and vital, they will include doubting and questioning, and even the changing of long-held convictions, reshaping in turn how we step into our own shoes and live and move in the world. As Thomas Merton wrote, if the you of 5 years ago does not consider the you of today a heretic, you are not growing spiritually. And yet, we have to find a way to hold these past selves, our own and others, with compassion, even as we and others live into new selves. Malcolm X, the person, remains marginalized somewhat in history, in part because his preaching and teaching were smeared as hate speech. As opposed to Dr. King, who preached nonviolence and love, the tired comparison goes, Malcolm X was a radical that, until the last years of his tragically short life, opposed integration and believed violence at times was justified. And yet Malcolm's daughter, Ilyasa Shabazz, in an interview some years ago shared, people still claim my father was deviant, that he was X this or X that. But what remains yet unknown somehow is that he was compassionate, responsible, and brilliant, loyal, loving, and had impeccable integrity. Malcolm learned from his parents what it meant to inhabit a life of leadership and activism and love of self. He taught Black people to know their worth in a society that denied it. And he helped people remember their dignity after being dehumanized. And he called those wielding dehumanization as a weapon to find their humanity again too. Despite the world telling him what he could and couldn't be, he could have had any career, but his faith inspired him instead to ceaselessly challenge injustice. Our image of God creates us, said Father Richard Rohr. Malcolm X prayed 5 times each day to Allah, whose common attributes in Islam are merciful and compassionate. His pilgrimage to Mecca, after leaving the anti-Semitic sect called the Nation of Islam, and his worshiping with diverse peoples from all over the world, marked a distinct shift in his life to the extent that he said, I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole. As I share that quote because it opens a door through which I can more easily connect with the legacy and ongoing work of Malcolm X, I recognize how present the tendency within me to pick and choose what is palatable and easy and ignore what provokes and causes dis-ease. The arc of Malcolm's life began in terror. His father, a Baptist preacher, was killed by the KKK. His childhood home burned to the ground. And he came to see America as a burning house built on white supremacy, one in which he would never or could ever be fully included or at home. In the movie, when Malcolm is walking to give a speech on a college campus, a well-meaning white college student approaches him and she asks, "What can I, a non-prejudiced white person, do to help further your cause?" To which Malcolm responds, "Nothing." Malcolm would later join Dr. King's movement for civil rights and integration and was instrumental in the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1964. But I can hear previous convictions Malcolm held with compassion, as they were born of hardships I can't even touch in my experience of life and privilege. It has been said that Jesus' preaching and teaching comforts the afflicted and afflicts the comfortable. Not unlike cinema at its best, who we believe ourselves to be will determine whether we are mirrored or provoked upon hearing the teachings of Jesus. It seems the fishermen that Jesus invites to follow him are settled into a comfortable life. They live by the sea, have steady, important work feeding their villages. They're not searching for a new life. It is Jesus that finds them. And the call to follow him doesn't fill an obvious vacuum or meet an obvious need in their lives, but like the call of the Hebrew Bible prophets in whose tradition Jesus emerges, the call is intrusive and disruptive. And why they go suddenly, we don't know. But all I can say from experience is that sometimes the voice of love finds us and speaks to us in tones beyond words, holds out a different pair of shoes, and we try them on and enter the previously unimagined. Among the first words these new followers will hear Jesus say, just verses from this scene, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are you who hunger and thirst for justice, for you will be filled. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are you who mourn, for you will be consoled." To comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, mirrored and provoked. These followers of Jesus will hear how the holy so cares for and clothes in splendor the grass of the fields and is concerned about the tiniest sparrow that falls to the ground. Jesus speaks of a love so tender and yet so pervasive it goes to the edges, there to heal and restore people who've been excluded from the community, turned away in their deepest need, and there liberate them from their isolation. Love, they learn, does not concern itself with questions of worthiness before it is offered. Such conditions, by definition, would make love something other than love. As they follow Jesus to these places of woundedness, they witness Jesus rearranging faulty relationships between people and their own self-image, with others, with society, and their understandings of God. It seems both Jesus and Malcolm both envision being most fully human as indivisible from self-giving action on behalf of vulnerable people. 2 weeks ago, following the inauguration, a man said in an interview, "It finally feels safe to be a white man again. His words reveal a truth we must face, wrote Reverend Cameron Trimble as she reflected on this interview. That for many, safety and security are tied to dominance and exclusion. The attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the rollback of civil rights protections, and the silencing of history all stem from a fear of change, a fear of losing power. By the way, when someone blames DEI for any problem, the subtext is always the same. No one is better suited and more qualified for a job or task than a white person. That's always the subtext. Why the targeting of 11 million undocumented immigrants? The profiling of Black and brown American citizens alike? Why the erasure of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Black History Month? Purging the history of slavery from textbooks and its functional continuation and oppression through sharecropping, Jim Crow, lynching, redlining, and mass incarceration? Why eliminate mention of the creative resilience of these communities, the courage of the Tuskegee Airmen and women that fought in World War II? Why ban discussions of gender and sexuality, especially as our trans siblings face attacks on their rights and their lives? Because honoring the contributions of people of color, LGBTQ+ individuals, and other marginalized groups challenges the supremacy of whiteness. It disrupts the narrative of dominance long upheld in this country. And it also reveals a deeper fear that according to census data by 2043, white people will no longer be the majority in America. That reality terrifies those clinging to this myth of superiority. The beauty of diversity, of race, of gender, sexual orientation, and abilities is not a threat, but a gift. All people bear the image of God. When God looks upon creation in all its stunning diversity, God declares it good. Our image of God creates us. Why settle for such small images of the sacred onto which we project our prejudices and then use as a divine seal approval on our worst impulses? May we never tire of telling of a God of love, a God who is love, a God who longs for everyone to be free because love can abide nothing less. The backlash against progress is indeed painful. Our progress as a nation and our progress as the beloved community. As more and more followers of Jesus line up to cast their nets with power, hoping to catch more and more and more for themselves, may we keep casting ours with the abandon of wide open welcome, with unapologetic love, so that they become sanctuary for others, knowing love is the only real power that can transform the world and heal these ever-widening spaces between us. And lest we otherize anyone, we recognize that racism and hatred and addiction to power do not take away the unshakable goodness in any of us, but rather our wounds. These point to woundedness, signs of profound unwellness. No whole person hates another. No healthy person believes others are inferior. No well society does either. So we hold hope and hone love. None of these wounds has the final say if we keep committing boldly to God's vision of healing, inclusion, and love. To step into our own shoes and in our own ways, stand for and with those who are being silenced, excluded, and targeted. Muster the courage to speak the truth in love, resist policies that harm our neighbors, and stay close to each other in community. Tend each other's hearts and love each other back from woundedness to wholeness. We need more light about each other, wrote Malcolm X. Light creates understanding, understanding creates love, love creates patience, patience creates unity. May it be so among us all. Amen.